broad spectrum professional people from the field of earth sciences. So I hope they will be certainly benefited from that. Before, although Dr. Tiwari was just talking to our speaker, but I'll request Tiwari ji to formally welcome and our speaker. And after that, I'll introduce to the audience also, although he is very well known, but as formal introduction. So Tiwari ji, please.
Namaskar and very good morning to today's speaker, Dr. Ranjit Rath, a very distinguished geoscientist and administrator, explorationist. My dear colleagues from AEG, office bearers, and members of the Association of Exploration Geophysicists, and several of the students and colleagues joined through the online media. Today, we are very happy and pleased in this fateful morning having Dr. Rath with us, who is very well known for his work, and he even in recent time more known bringing his organization in forefront of the exploration of natural resources, particularly the mineral resources, and also involved in several of the policy making at the national level. He held the position for some time as an additional charge of the Director General of Geological Survey of India. That is the biggest geoscience organization in the country and probably one amongst the largest geoscientist pool in the world. With his experience, we look forward for listening about what is expected from geoscientists in coming decades. The topic is so appropriate that it does not only require the attention of the mature geoscientists and professionals, but also exciting about this work and topic by the students. You are also aware that Association of Exploration Geophysicists over the decades have been trying to bring the knowledge and also reaching to the industry, connecting in academic to the industry through the association AEG, particularly in the exploration expert areas, been trying to bring the good number of the reputed and known explorationists for its event, whether it is the annual event or any specific lecture. And for today, AEG chose and invited Professor Dr. Ranjit Rath for talk on a very important topic. What is being particularly we be doing in the coming decade? How will it be important for science, economy, and the society? So with this, I request the Secretary AEG to formally introduce today the speaker of AEG to the audience. Dr. Chaturvedi, it's over to you.
Thanks. So Today's guest speaker, Dr. Ranjit Rath, is presently well known in the earth science fraternity. A brief biodata, although there is a lot of things to tell about him, but I'll be just telling in brief about his credentials. Dr. Ranjit Rath is an alumni of IIT Bombay, IIT Kharagpur, IIFT Delhi, and also Ahmedabad. He has been a very professional, and he has contributed a lot in the geoscience application in the projects, project execution, corporate strategy, and the business development when he was a part of Engineers India Limited. We all know that he is a National Geoscience Awardee in 2016, and presently he is the CMD of Mineral Exploration Corporation India Limited. He is having additional charge of the managing director of Bharat Gold Mines, and he's CEO of newly formed company, the very important company, very strategic, Kabil, where we are looking for the stakes in some of the foreign deposits, particularly for the strategic minerals. So if we see that he's responsible at present for a very important things related to the mineral exploration in the country, the policy forming, exploration in the country, exploration outside country, exploration of common minerals, exploration related to the strategic minerals. So his vision for how it is going to happen and what as a geoscientist we are likely to do in the coming period, what we should do to make that all these ventures successful so that India can contribute much more than what it is contributing right now in its GDP. Apart from this, he has written a lot of books. He has published technical papers, and more than that, he is a avid HR practitioner, which is very important because it is the human resources which are going to do the things to happen, whatever is being planned by the government. So this is now I hand over to Dr. Ranjit Rath for his lecture. We all are waiting for that. Dr. Ranjit Rath, please.
A warm good morning to all of you. First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank Dr. Chaturbedi for giving me this privilege to be part of this August gathering. And I would say that it's not a monologue. It's a kind of interaction that I would look forward. So, Dr. Chaturbedi, thank you very much for that. It is an honor to be part of this August gathering. And I will tell you why. And before I proceed on the talk, a very good context setting by Dr. Tiwari, who is heading one of the most crucial organization on the research front in the country as far as geoscience is concerned. It takes immense pride to acknowledge the kind of research which is happening in NGRI under the leadership of Professor Tiwari. Before we formally take on this subject, I would like to remember all those great geologists, geophysicists, geochemists, geoscientists, art scientists who have shaped the context of geology in this country. And while doing so, we must acknowledge the enormous efforts of our revered organizations like Geological Survey of India, revered organizations like Atomic Minerals Division, revered organizations like Mineral Exploration Corporation, and several other public sector undertakings, research organizations, our IITs. The best part is everybody is doing their bit. But the question is there a collective attempt? Probably that is something which we could discuss about it, and I would leave some questions for the audiences which is listening or participating today. When I thought about the title of it, I understand that we would address to seasoned professionals in this particular domain, and I would also understand that the reach is wide and vast. This is one of the positives of the pandemic, that we are actually using the online platform to reach out to a wider audience. So that gives us a kind of a opportunity not only to restrict ourselves within geographic boundaries or within organization. Now we have become transnational, intercontinental. And I also understand that this platform, we would have students, young enthusiasts, and international participants also. So the context of what is that the geoscience would look in next 10 years, and how as individual geoscientists we must react or respond or probably prepare ourselves for the future to come. While we look at the future part of it, it is always better to be reminiscent about what all we have done. And if I can recall, we have done immensely well in terms of active research, applications of geosciences in varieties of fields. As history would look at, as Geological Survey of India, the mother organization of geology in this country, it was actually institutionalized to look at coal, which is the primary energy source then, and it continues to be the primary energy source today. And even if there is a talk that the primary energy source will have a dent because of the renewables coming into the spree, but coal is going to stay here. And this is where we all started. And we all started means the geoscience per the country started. And then something happened very interestingly. We had ONGC carved out. And by then, Oil India was already in place. Now, having said ONGC and Oil India in place, we have actually discovered hydrocarbon, the black oil, which is actually the inevitable thing in our economy today. Whether it is into petrochemicals, or it is into mobility, or it is into anything and everything that we use in our life. Having done the oil part and in the coal part, we were actually looking at the nuclear energy part. So while AMD then was born, and when AMD was born, we started looking at uranium, thorium, and all those series of minerals. And then we bought technologies to harvest those mineral resources into energy. Similarly, we also started looking at our bulk minerals as part of the discovery process of geoscientific pursuits. So while doing so, we did one simple thing. We created organizations that is contributing immensely to this country's economy. By virtue of bauxite, we created NALCO. By virtue of copper, we created Hindustan Copper Limited. By virtue of zinc, we created Hindustan Zinc Limited. We have NMDC per se to handle the iron ore resources. We have Steel Authority of India Limited to handle the iron ore resources, and several of them. Then one interesting thing happened. 1972, MECL was carved out of GSI. And why I am narrating this, a brief history, is just as a context setting that how a geologist, or I would actually use the term geoscientist, because today it is not geophysics per se, it is not physics per se, it is not chemistry per se, it is not geology per se. It is actually together. It is a subject of geoscience which is delivering. And we are not doing it alone. We are doing it together, but there is a need to enhance our collaboration, not only within the subjects or domain experts, but also within the organizations. So having had MECL, and then under the umbrella of Coal India, we had CMPDIL. So these two organizations started looking at detailed exploration of mineral resources. While doing detailed exploration, several CSR labs were created to pursue active and fundamental research. And one of them, which was doing and also doing today, is NGRI. Now, since I'm talking to AEG, I need not, and all the participants would know fairly well, the interdisciplinary nature of this subject and the application of geophysics that comes as a non-invasive method to capture the data or to create signatures not only of the earth but also of the ocean and in the ocean bottom and the airborne geophysics part. Now, while all this was happening, we also had ISRO and Space Application Center and Indian Institute of Remote Sensing and National Remote Sensing Agency, NRSA per se, start looking at the application of remote sensing not only for various other facets of infrastructure or societal purpose, but also for geology. Now, let's go back to a bit. Having created a construct, we define the geological milieu of the country by the activities of these organizations per se. And the mother of all organizations, as I have said, is Geological Survey of India. As per Geological Survey of India assessment, from the geology can be distinctly divided into two parts. One is natural resources. So the factor or the subject that deals with natural resource part, which has got tremendous contribution to the economy of the country. The other part is natural hazards, which has been in recent times been very, very repetitive, scary, horrible, and terrible experiences. Experiences which no one would have thought of. Having a kind of barrier-less two categories of natural hazards and natural resources, the rest all are actually the bigger set of pursuing fundamental geoscience. That includes paleontology, that includes geochronology, that includes microbiology. I mean, all these are small sets which contributes for this purpose. We have another beautiful organization in the country, that is Birbal Sahni Institute of Paleoscience. They are doing phenomenal amount of work of application of paleontology or paleosciences, not only for reconstruction of the geological time scale for India or for the entire globe, but also applying them for discovery of hydrocarbon, or more specifically for reservoir characterization. Now, why we are talking about this center of excellences? Because these center of excellences are actually the nests which are available to our young geoscientific enthusiasts to pursue, because they need a platform. And when they choose, some are very fortunate to choose their playground. I would call these organizations as the playgrounds, and the head of the organizations are primarily the leaders who enable or bring out the best in these young enthusiasts to pursue a research which has to be unparalleled and cutting edge. Just before these discussions, one thing that comes to my mind was number of technical papers that we produce, number of patents that we could produce, number of discourse or case studies that we share. Coming back to the topic of geoscience in the future would actually require a more collaborative approach amongst all these organizations. And this is where the professional societies like Geological Society of India, Association of Exploration Geosciences, and many more, including the 36 IGC and IUGS, a huge role to play. As seasoned professionals, part of these professional societies, actually we are creating a platform of learning, and we are actually allowing ourselves to be questioned and creating an enabling mechanism for these youngsters to learn from our experiences. And again, this is where the online mode has come to our rescue. As you all would appreciate, in recent times, the component of training has really multiplied many times. And this is what was needed. While I acknowledge the efforts of Geological Survey of India Training Institute to impart training to all and everybody, not only from this country, but 72 countries from overseas, it was constrained by the boundaries of the GSITI training module. But now, because of this particular online mode, we are actually doing a yeoman services, and the ramifications are huge. With this context, now let's look at, are we talking about lesser possibilities today that we had 10 years ago? Or are we talking about more possibilities 10 years down the line? When we started geosciences, its primary objective was fundamental research and catering to the energy need. The initial days, the energy need were met from coal, so mineral exploration was one of the major thrusts of geosciences, or for that matter for hydrocarbon. Then we had development of the hydropower projects. The National Hydropower Project and NHPC has got a very good, strong geoscientific community. Now, while pursuing the geoscience in hydropower projects, we developed the aptitude and the knowledge base of engineering geology. And that is something which is actually catering to the current need of infrastructure projects where geoscience plays an important role. We name the metros, which is being constructed pan-India. We look at the railway tunnels crisscrossing the entire country. We look at the various other infrastructure projects where our geologists, or specifically the engineering geology domain, is engaged. As we look, we are today challenging the most recent and ever active fault zones or the beautiful Himalayan territory through our knowledge, and it is where the geologists talk to the civil engineers and geotechnical engineers seamlessly in a single language. So more specific is, in the future to come, we are doing well, but in the future to come, while we enhance our presence through infrastructural development in the Himalayan territory and on the northeastern area, primarily for railway tunnel and for hydropower projects, our geologists need to communicate in a language which the geotechnical engineers understand. Because as geologists, we have an uncanny ability of something I call it as third eye. We are taught or we are trained by our teachers, by our immediate bosses, by the head of the organization, by the leaders whom we emulate in our career, an interpretative skill, because this is something which is not visible. So this is where actually a geoscientist is equipped in terms of its academics. And this 3D perspective needs to be communicated to the fellow engineers who are actually implementing the projects. So it is important that as geologists, while we must speak in the same language to avoid any kind of a miscommunication which has got huge impact in the project per se, we must also understand that where these findings or our interpretations are finding its use, then only we can appreciate each other. Then only there will be a kind of a reciprocation of respect between the domains. So while this is very, very crucial to cross the railway tunnels in the North Frontier Railways or even the higher reaches of Himalaya, including the Jammu-Srinagar Connect, it has got serious impact on the defense mechanism of the country. We are also aware of the fact of application of geosciences in creating bunkers, in creating resting places or strategic places to provide shelter to our defense forces. So these interactions of construction or specific interventions in terms of civil and structure with the earth rock or the rock, we understand much better than any civil engineer. So we must communicate with them. We must communicate with them in that same language, and we must understand it. So when I say we must understand it, our colleagues, the geophysicist, has got a better mathematical bent of mind. So what is that we must look at with our young geologists, or we need to harness this, is bring in a concept of mathematics or engineering application for our geoscientists. Now let us come to the mining part of it. Similarly, the mineral ecosystem or the mining and mineral ecosystem is hugely dependent on the exploration of minerals. Now, if we discover something which is uneconomical or economically not viable to be exploited, it really doesn't make any sense. So that doesn't stop us taking pride in discovering something. But the more better philosophy is how we stroke something which can be economically viable and harnessed out of it. In that context, as geologists, we must understand the mining practices and the problems or the challenges. I would call it as challenges rather than problems, because problems are difficult, challenges are opportunities. So as geologists, we must understand that what exactly the mining engineers would require, or how we can talk to each other in terms of creating a 3D model. And to tell you, and you all are aware, developing a 3D model after having done a detailed exploration is a thought leadership process. So as geologists, we should have exposure to all the advanced geological softwares. I need not name them, but we have dedicated softwares for bedded deposits, for coal, for hydrothermal deposits, even for our atomic minerals. So that understanding of softwares and developing the models which can seamlessly translate into a mining development model would be of immense help. And that is what in some sectors our people are doing. While on the mineral exploration stage, NMDC is doing fantastically in terms of exploration also. So when we all know that there is a concept of risk-taking ability, because the success ratio of mineral exploration varies from commodity to commodity. And in case of diamond, it could be 1:500 or 1:1000. So we need the best of the equipments, the best of the instruments, the best of the investments. That's all happening. What is required, and I would call upon all the professional societies or the senior leadership who are actually involved in the mining sector. And I'm saying this from the perspective of mining sector. We will touch upon the oil and gas sector in a different manner. We must allow our youngsters or ingrain the quality of taking risk. A risk which could be a delta, a 10%, or a stage-wise risk of 10% to 20%. Only then the youngsters or the field force will think beyond the boundaries, and that will lead to discoveries. Otherwise, till now, as I understand, we have about an OGP area, obvious geological potential area, of about 8 lakh, 7 lakh and half square kilometer out of 32 lakh square kilometer of the entire country. Now, these enablers of risk-taking ability is ingrained over a period of time, and it has to be taught, and it has to be given a free hand to experiment. Because normally what happens in such projects, the exploration cost or the exploratory investigation cost of any big project, be it infrastructure or be it exploration and mines, is to the tune of 1% or less than 1%. We should not restrict ourselves. I know there is no limit to it, but is there any harm in letting our younger generation to adopt 1.1% or 2.1%? And that is our responsibility. And it is a collective responsibility. So I'm sure the similar thing is also in exercise for oil and gas. But there is a difference. Oil and gas, by virtue of its nature of existence or occurrence, or the kind of technology that has evolved over a period of time because of its necessity and because of its impact in our economy, it has migrated way ahead. And when I say way ahead, that means it is well structured. A single borehole or an exploratory well is drilled after thorough investigation and a layers of decision-making process. But then that layers of decision-making process actually creates an ecosystem for taking that risk. So all our future people, future geoscientists or geologists must take that delta risk. Now, coming to the other part, where all geoscientific research can target. Now, there is a fantastic presentation by IUGS, International Geological Congress, which outlines how the future of geoscience would look like. There is a concept of the fourth dimension which I would like to bring in now. And I'm told that only at 2 or 3 research labs, we have this high-end dating equipments or instruments. Now, from a fundamental point of view, while we have already covered the obvious geological potential areas to look at the natural resources, it is extremely important to draw parallel with other countries or the best studied metallurgy or geological settings, be it Australia, be it South Africa, be it Canada, or even USA. Now, what happens? To draw parallel, we have to undertake deep seismic, or for that matter, any deeply establishing component of geophysics. It cannot be only one technique. So GSI, I'm aware of it, has already initiated a very flagship initiative, and I'm also aware that NGRI also is attached to it, and Geoscience Australia is involved in it, are running transects across the Aravallis, across the Chitradurga cyst belt, from west to east, from Dharwar Craton to the Kadapa, and then across the Singhum shear zone having the eastern transit. The intent is to understand the metallurgy of these transects and look for any deep and concealed mineral deposits. Because if you all agree with me, from an economy point of view, India is importing about 80 to 82% of crude oil requirement for the country. Similarly, there are many more minerals we are import dependent. So while ONGC, Oil India and oil and gas sector in support or with the support of other research institutes are pursuing serious exploration campaigns, not only in the mainland or the peninsular India, but also off the coast of India in different territories, different geological settings. So the geosciences frontier is actually getting deeper and deeper. In a similar manner, we must understand that we need to discover more gold, more copper, more lead, more zinc for consumption of this country. While we talk about the bulk minerals and then the deep-seated concealed minerals, somewhere we have actually lagged, and I don't hesitate to say this, on the aspect of critical and RE minerals. IREL is doing a good job in terms of harnessing the potential of the beach sand deposits along with AMD. And GSI and AMD are picking up some select deposits where there is likelihood of RE deposits, occurrences of REs. But that is not sufficient. This is where again the COVID-19 reference I will bring in. During this COVID-19 pandemic, in GSI, we had 100 young geologists struck in the GSI TI Training Institute as part of their annual training program. So these future geologists, we engage them to scan the entire country, to scan all the geological reports available with GSI, and created a docket of information which is primarily a concise, specific, deterministic locations to look for REs and critical and strategic minerals. And I'm told by virtue of my interaction with Dr. Sinha, AMD has also mapped several areas in the country, not only for radioactive minerals, but also for those lithium, for those critical minerals such as lithium, cobalt, vanadium, nickel, and the series goes on. I'll take a step back. While we are looking at it, as geologists, we should not just stop at discovering them. We must unearth enough of them for some process engineer or a metallurgist to look at the downstream part of it, because that technology is still elusive to us. In this context, I had the opportunity of visiting several countries abroad where we have predominant deposition or occurrences of such minerals. One of them is the Argentina, Bolivia, Chile triangle, where we have huge salars, and using solution mining, we are getting the brine out of the surface, from subsurface. Evaporation happens, and then we are extracting lithium salt. And in addition to that, we are also extracting potash. From an Indian economic perspective, while these critical minerals are essential, to reduce our import substitution, we must acknowledge the fact that all our mineral resources which is used for fertilizer is imported. There is a huge import bill which is actually draining our exchequer. So there is a concerted effort now to explore the possibility of looking for more rock phosphates, more potash, more bedded salt, and we have plenty of them. So this is some area where I'm sure the future of geoscience applications would actually come into play. The world has gone ahead on the concept of solution mining. The world has gone ahead on the concept of unearthing more phosphatic deposits. And it's not that we don't have it. We have it, probably a lack of focus, or I'll not say lack of focus, or kind of initiating a priority attention to it. While we are talking about all this, there is another third dimension of geoscience application, which is also happening elsewhere in the world, and we must practice it. And that has got serious applications with respect to coal. Let's go back. Coal remains the primary energy requirement for the country. And with 82% requirement of oil and gas being made through import, we have two interventions to make. One, create subsurface strategic storages for both crude oil and natural gas. I had the opportunity to see creation of these infrastructures elsewhere in the globe, and I had the opportunity of getting associated in such infrastructure creation in India. Now the phase 1 storage program, which is called Strategic Petroleum Reserves Program, has already been commissioned in India, and the phase 2 storage program is under anvil. And these storages are primarily in huge rock caverns. This is an area which is actually evolving. These huge caverns are actually multiple times than the tunnels that we build for our powerhouses or our HRT and TRTs or our railway tunnels. And the geological understanding of the location and building these facilities, which are 30-meter height, 22-meter wide and 1 kilometer long, with the process part of it, keeping the crude oil within the subsurface located caverns, are very, very important. And such capacity building, in addition to other areas, has actually taught me that how an integrated approach is essential for the subject of geoscience. One more thing which geoscientists we all learn and we must practice is the ability or an opportunity to predict, and then having implemented, create enough avenue for back analysis. The back analysis is actually a kind of validation. Now, when I reiterate back analysis, it is not to find fault. It is to understand, has there been any change in my prediction? And if so, is it for good or it was for bad? And if it is for bad, could we contain the impact? So the concept of back analysis and risk register and risk mapping is all the domain of geoscientists. And I would call upon all the geoscientists who are practicing geoscience today, in whatever forum they are doing it, must develop the concept, and as professional societies or the senior leadership of geoscience, we must encourage it. Because when I draw parallel to oil and gas sector on this particular domain, I see a beautiful story. ONGC over a period of time must have drilled enough number of wells. And at that point of time in late 80s, late 90s, early 2000, those exploratory wells or the geophysical data that has been gathered might not have yielded any result. But is it enough we leave them as an unutilized data, or we should improve upon our data analysis process to revisit them and reintegrate them as part of something called data mining? So to me, the future of geoscience is actually data mining. Now, data mining, which has to be maintained at a single platform. Unfortunately, we do not have it now. DGH has done a fantastic job in creating something called a national data repository, but that is pertaining to oil and gas data only. In a similar effort, in GSI, we have just started an initiative called National Geodata Repository, NGDR, where we expect, and it will be mandated rather, to upload all the exploration data in whatsoever format it may be. It could be airborne geophysics, it could be subsea geophysics, it could be subsea coring, and all the exploration activity which is going on in mainland India will be uploaded there. That will actually give us ample opportunity for us to pursue research and assimilate the data and create models to replicate anywhere and draw parallel with any other part of the globe. In a similar manner, another beautiful derivative of this data, which is being successfully done in oil and gas sector, is creating auctionable blocks to bring in investment in terms of exploration. If we struck hydrocarbon, it is actually a double whammy, but the intent is to bring in exploration fund. In a similar manner, you all must be knowing during the path-breaking reforms which has taken place in the recent months in the mines and mineral sector, and I feel privileged to be part of it as part of the formulation process, is it has actually created an enabler to bring in investment and bring in partners or stakeholders who would actually invest in exploration and expedite it. And often there is a question that is there enough for coexistence? To me, having been the CMD of MECL and DGGSI, I understand that the country is so huge, the untapped potential needs to be revisited again and again. So these kind of approaches are actually essential for the geoscientific fraternity to practice. And I would suggest that we must, as the senior leadership, allow our youngsters to be resilient enough. Because I use the term resilient in the sense that if we don't discover in one go, it is not necessary that we'll discover in the second attempt. It may not be necessary that we discover in the third attempt. But the fourth attempt, which will turn out to be a discovery, would actually give the value in multiple terms. So all the exploration investment, and I would reiterate this term, not exploration expenses, but exploration investment as part of the return. Now, while we talk about all this in terms of resources, let's look at the hazards, the natural hazards. In recent times, the entire Uttarakhand is actually getting destroyed by virtue of repeat of flash floods. And the memories are actually very recent and very scary memories. And with the advent of social media, we now come to know the first-hand information of earthquakes, the first-hand information of landslides. There are phenomenal amount of work for landslide monitoring and detection is happening in various parts of the country, in various research organizations. It is time to collaborate. Otherwise, these landslides or these earthquakes would happen. We cannot stop it. But can we evolve a mechanism to predict? Now, the prediction has to be correct in the sense that we evacuate people. As far as the atmospheric science is concerned, we all agree that by virtue of good amount of research by IMD for the cyclone monitoring part, which is also a geoscientific approach, we have been quite successful to predict the track of the cyclone and evacuate people to reduce our casualty. Can we do it, or can we do something like this for the natural hazards that is happening? I still remember the massive tsunami that occurred to the eastern part of the country. And after that, there are several integrated coastal zone mapping projects were launched. And I'm aware that phenomenal amount of work is being carried out in Chennai under NIOT. And NIO is also involved there. Now, how soon we can bring it into application? While on the same subject of tsunami, we are also looking at oceans as part of our economic system, and we have several such discoveries lying within the ocean bed, or rather seabed. And I'm aware of the fact that the activities by NGRI going on for gas hydrates along with ONGC and Oil India. I'm aware of the fact that we have got polymetallic manganese nodules in the seabed. Probably those are those future resources, if not today, maybe tomorrow, we need to harness. Coming back to the coal concept. Now, while oil is still being imported, with so much of coal around, we need to enhance the usage of coal, but under the ambit of clean coal technology. While we say clean coal technology, as geologists, we must understand that clean coal technology is actually not just any process dimension. It is actually application of geosciences to reduce the emission of carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide to the environment. So the concept of carbon capture underground or in the subsurface aquifers is a domain of geosciences. In a similar manner, we must look at storage of natural gas in the same format, because that is also another area where we see value addition from a geoscientist. Now, coming back again to the coal, I would draw attention because we have plenty of them. We have coal in the entire Gondwana basin of the country. Unfortunately, we don't have coal as good as we have it in Australia or in Indonesia. The ash content is 35%, less or more in that range. Now the option is, can we harness those coals in situ through something called underground coal gasification system? Now, if we can adopt underground coal gasification system, we can get the synthetic gas, which will actually replace the natural gas for the purpose of creating the petrochemical derivatives, which has got its use. In a similar manner, can we use our geoscientific knowledge for anything that is related for the purpose of human mankind? In fact, while we talk about these natural resources, one thing which our colleagues in NGRI and CGWB and NRSA is doing, they've got a fantastic aquifer mapping of the country, because groundwater is something which bothers each one of us. And on the surface water front, there is serious geomorphological modeling, which is necessary to not only contain our rivers, but also create, because I would reiterate on this, create a kind of a supply chain imperative in terms of the rivers being used as conduits of our economic development, as inland waterway development. Now, what happens as part of this inland waterway development, we bring in the concept of subaqueous dredging. And this is where also we as geologists, as an engineering application, we find use. While we do all these varieties of applications, I would actually go back to the concept of data mining. Because what happens, we must capture these data. And in recent times, we are aware of the usage of data that is being used in our daily life to map not only what we wear, but also what we eat. And I need not elaborate that particular application of digital marketing. Similarly, the digital intervention, not only in oil and gas exploration, which is already in place, we must look at digital intervention in the mineral and mining system. And as geologist, I see enough of opportunity there. Unfortunately, we are yet to create a digital core library for ourselves. Efforts are on, and I'm aware that an automated digital core scanning machine has been procured in MECL in this regard. And GSI is in the process of setting up national data core libraries. Now there it has got two uses. One, you capture the data in a digital medium for the concessionaire to take charge of its auction process. But to me, it is the economic part. The fundamental part is we create a database of mineral assemblages with respect to the host rock. And such mineral assemblages with respect to the host rock would actually be captured over a period of time across the country, across the formations, and across the minerals. And can we use those data for drawing parallels and deciphering something which is otherwise not visible? In all these dimensions of geoscience, before I conclude, I would actually lay emphasis on training. Training is something which we must. I'm aware that all the organizations are imparting training to their officers. It's very well structured in ONGC, Oil India, in Coal India. It's very well structured. It is very well structured in AMD. It is very well structured in GSI. It is very well structured in MECL. But to me, it is not sufficient. We have several other stakeholders in this game of geoscience for us. We have the Directorate of Mines and Geology geologists. We have several private sector companies who require this trained manpower to add value to their operations. I'm aware that GSI TI is conducting training programs, but instead of that, we could have a delta effort, which we call Kaizen effort rather, that the professional societies, which AEG is doing, and I'm so glad, the professional societies have actually initiated online training. And I'm also aware that several leadership geo practitioners, I need not name them, but they have now started these training programs in a very structured manner. And these training programs today are not only happening in the country, but it is happening because of the online medium. It is happening across the globe. So primarily, these professional societies have become brand ambassador of the country or of the subject. And in that respect, I find the current generation of geoscientists are very, very fortunate, are very, very privileged, and they must avail this opportunity to make themselves enable. And here, in addition to resilience, I would bring in a term called to remain relevant. I would urge upon all the geoscientists to remain relevant in whatever they are doing through these training programs, through these mid-career options, through these mid-career interventions, and to sharpening their skills. It has got two purposes. One, they would actually empower themselves by virtue of awareness and information so that their career progression is protected. Two, it would actually meet the basic tenet of our Indian economy, which I would call, and I like so much, the current coinage of term Atmanirbhar Bharat. In whatsoever means that we do, we are actually contributing to the Indian economy. So to me, it is not less than 2% to the GDP in mines and mineral sector, but the impact of geosciences in the Indian economy is actually on a multiplier mode. So I would strongly recommend to all the youngsters to continue their learning skills to remain relevant not only to the subject but also to the profession that they are practicing. Lastly, before I conclude, we must pay reverence to all those great geoscientists who have toiled hard to bring the platform to this level. And you all would understand that the science that deals with geology or earth sciences is very, very difficult and field based. We got to travel or traverse across mountainous regions, across leech infested dense forest, across the northeastern Arakan belt, across the Himalayan terrain, across the eastern Ghats, across the hugely dense the Deccan Troughs, and then the Western Ghats. Because I started my career on the intertidal platform of the Gulf of Cambay, where we would get into the ship or the small boat with a tidal value of about 10 meters and a current gushing at a speed of 6 to 8 knots. So these kind of field experiences actually makes us, I'll not say hardened, but actually makes us empathetic persons who would understand the usage or the individual domain expertise. So with that, the third term that I would bring in addition to resilience and remaining relevant, is respect. As individuals, we give respect to others, but as individuals, I would urge upon to the younger geoscientists to continue to give respect to the thought process of the other geoscientists. Because in geology or in geoscience, disagreement is something which is very, very healthy. And such disagreements actually results into path-breaking or cutting-edge research results. So with all these thought process of minds, I strongly believe that we are on a pedestal today and we have tremendous amount of opportunity beckoning us to take this country into a different league in the next decade. And on the fundamental geoscience part, the research must continue to bring in more application-oriented interventions. So once again, I would pay my obeisance to all the great geologists who has been our teachers, our immediate bosses, our immediate leaders, or even we have so many geologists whom we have followed as Eklavya. And you all agree with me that there are some geologists who have never taught us. But as Eklavya, we have emulated him or his or her papers or findings, his lectures. So there is no stoppage in learning. So with these few thoughts of mine, I would actually conclude my talk today and again give huge applaud to the organizers of AEG who have done yeoman service to the fraternity of geoscientific community of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rath. It was wonderful talk, thought provoking, and I think for the youngsters, it should be mind blowing. And Tiwari, you wanted to say something? Please go ahead.
No, thank you. I think if there are any other questions, we can entertain that.
Yes.
Those who are on MS Teams, they can raise their hand and ask questions. And those who are joining through the streaming, they can type over their messages, and we can take them up and put before the today's speaker. I think we have a very senior professors like Professor Tandon and our directors from India, like Professor Dimji board. So, do you have, sir, any comments? Thanks.
Yes, Ash.
Yeah, I have a question. You talked a little bit about the opening up of areas for exploration, for collaboration with private entities and international companies, presumably. And we've seen the success of mineral exploration in Australia and Canada, really driven by the junior exploration market. These are small companies, raise their money on the stock exchanges, make those discoveries, pass them on to the mining companies, and then do the advanced exploration and exploitation there. Do you see a similar role for those smaller companies in the Indian context, particularly with respect to the stock exchanges and raising funds?
Ask very, very pertinent question. And I think having been involved in the mineral sector for quite a time now and being part of the reforms, I would like to answer this question in a very different manner. The Indian economy, specifically the mineral and mining sector per se, is not in a kind of a similar format that is in existence with Australia or in South Africa or in Canada. Because I have mapped the Australian economy in terms of mining and mineral sector, the Canada also. There the baseline data is created, and then the junior exploration companies, they come in, they invest in the exploration, and then they sell that exploration, or they would actually, the major mining companies invest or take that exploration data with a premium. That is not the construct in India so far. In India, the exploration work is actually being done by the government setup. So the current reforms, which has actually opened up the thought process, is we would have opportunities for international players to come on board even at the G4 level of exploration. So the state governments are actually going to bring out mineral acreages at the G4 level, and the exploration agencies could, or the mining companies, why exploration agencies? The mining companies could come and submit their bids for composite license. That means they would first invest in exploration. If they are successful, they would get seamlessly the mining lease. If they are not successful, there is no harm. The data is generated. So earlier, this particular construct was not there. Only during this 2-3 months, lot of modifications or amendments has happened, which are going to enable this. And you are right. The countries should have enough of baseline data generation. So as Geological Survey of India, I was as DG, we have conceived about couple of initiatives in formulating the baseline geoscience data. And our colleague, other research organizations like NGRI is also coming on board, I'm aware. So these geoscience data will be hosted in National Geological Data Repository. And as international exploration companies or junior exploration companies can come and invest. Now, I will answer the other part of your question about the stock exchange. For stock exchange investment, we need a kind of a construct where the mining and mineral sector should be recognized as an industry. Then only you can pick up funds from the market. So I think over a period of time that's going to happen. But I'm aware of the fact that the mining companies, the big ones, would like to look at India for the precious metals or the deep and concealed metals. And for them, exploration investment will not be a matter of concern. So yes, India is open to all such concessionary propositions.
That's great to hear, and I think that the turning that back round to the next generation of geoscientists, it's again another opportunity there. It's another reason why we need to train the next generation, because any company coming in will want that local knowledge. Yes, they'll bring in their knowledge of similar geological domains from elsewhere in the world, but that local knowledge, that local skill set is going to be really important. So I wholeheartedly endorse your treatise there about needing to really invest in the local geoscience community and really develop that training. So thank you very much for your presentation.
True. Thank you very much.
Dr. Dinesh Gupta ji.
Good afternoon to all. It's nice to see all of you after nearly 2.5 years. And I compliment my friend Dr. Rath for nice and elaborate presentation. I've got two more points to make here. One regarding, I think Tiwari is also aware, Chaturvedi Sahib is also aware, Dr. Rath must be aware when he was having charge of DGGSI. The tender process which takes a lot of time and ultimately we fail. As you are aware, airborne geophysics, what we started, we could do only those blocks. But after that, tender processing is not getting success. It is due to red tapeism or due to legal practice and all that it is happening. So can at political level or the higher level, this can be overcome by some mechanism. So things are simplified, and in due course of time, indigenous capacity building should be there. And I think indigenous Indian companies should be encouraged to form a group and join that. Number one. Second thing, I think when we started airborne geophysics, airborne data to be supplied to freely to all stakeholders, preliminary data, on which the investment or junior miners or stakeholders comes and take that data, that should be freely available as the practice in Canada and other countries. I've seen that. Then, but unfortunately, that is not happening. That data is not freely available to all stakeholders. The preliminary data. Then, based on that, somebody is serious, wants to work further, he can go and detail and purchase detailed data. So that these 2 points I want to make. And then third, that integration need to be done at the grassroots level. You are aware that I was in quite senior position, and I tried my best, and to some extent it started also. But unfortunately, grassroots level, let it be GSI or MECL or many organizations, the compartmentalization of geology, geophysics, it is still exists. So I feel younger generations need to drive some mechanism. And thank you, organizers, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
I'll quickly add 2 takeaways of this, because I'm aware Dr. Dinesh Gupta had a very illustrious career in GSI. He was the DG GSI also. Now, one thing which I had left, and I was actually hoping this observation, and it was a deliberate left. As geoscientists, I would also request that it is incumbent upon us to have a fair amount of idea about the commercials and about the financials. He rightly said that often the tender conditions fail. But I would say yes, we agree that it fails. But as geoscientists who are actually executing such projects, exposure to the commercial conditions, exposure to the project execution philosophy, and exposure to the financial part of it is so crucial that we cannot take the shelter of just being a technocrat. We have to be a technocrat, not a technologist. There is a huge difference between the two. And I am actually immensely benefited because of this approach. So what Dr. Dinesh Gupta has rightly pointed out, that this is something which we must do. So probably I remember in GSI TI, there is a course or some training program. Otherwise, maybe our professional societies can also start preparing 2 or 3 training modules on project execution, on the commercial aspects of the various tender conditions and the financials. As of the data sharing philosophy, recently Government of India has brought out a data sharing philosophy, and I think that's fairly open, and that has been promulgated by Niti Aayog. So what Dr. Dinesh Gupta has observed is a very pertinent point. And yes, the third one is very crucial. We must break these barriers of geophysics, geochemistry, and geology, because unless the geologist understands the geophysical data processing, they cannot interpret it. And I'm so pleased to see Dr. Ramarao in the photograph, who has been a pioneer geophysicist, and I had the pleasure of attending an AEG conference in Shillong along with him. So these barriers are to be broken. Then only we will see the flourishing of science.
Dr. Ramarao, do you have some points to make? Ramarao garu, please unmute your mic.
You need to unmute. You have to unmute. Unmute.
To go top right and see the mic, click on that, and it will be unmuted.
Okay. First of all, hearty congratulations to Dr. Rath. It's so good to hear you, and it's an inspiring talk, sir. I would like you to reflect on greenfield exploration. This is something that's really still a gray area, in my opinion. All the organizations talk about bringing new areas into exploration, and in your opinion, sir, what extent we have really succeeded in bringing new areas into exploration, and if there is anything we can still do further to improve that, because unless you bring in the 40% of Indian area which is not yet explored, I don't think we can ever claim to be an advanced country as far as exploration is concerned. And I once again congratulate you. Thank you.
Okay, on greenfield exploration, 2 things that comes to my mind. If you look at the oil and gas sector, we have about 26 sedimentary basins, which is categorized under 5 categories. The category 1 is actually the Cambay Basin and the Assam Arakan, which is the prolific ones. And my colleagues in ONGC and Oil India and the exploration wing of other oil and gas sector and the private sector per se in the oil and gas spectrum are actually converting these category 2 basins into category 1, category 3 basins into category 2. So that is continuously going on in a very structured manner in oil and gas sector. As far as mineral sector is concerned, it is primarily driven by Geological Survey of India. So the initial thought process was, let us map the country. Having done that, we have already covered the whole country, which is about 32 lakh square kilometer. And the obvious geological potential area, OGP area, was initially mapped about 5.5 lakh square kilometer. Today, we have enhanced that 5.5 lakh to 7.5 lakh square kilometer. Besides that, as Dr. Dinesh Gupta, he was pioneering that activity actually in GSI, the Airborne Geophysics campaign. And I am aware that NGRI is also involved in that. The Airborne Geophysics campaign was initially done for 4 blocks each for 12. Another 10 is already in the pipeline. So these national programs are being rolled out in a staggered manner. And I would be very happy to share that GSI has already rolled out the National Geochemical Mapping Program, the National Geophysical Mapping Program. Now, having done the NGCM part, now the thought process is to enhance its utility. So during the last 1 year of COVID period, what we did, we converted those data that were captured into chemical atlases. Our western region has brought out 2 beautiful atlases, so is the central region. So these atlases of chemical enrichment would actually benefit for greenfield exploration. Then extracts of the airborne geophysics, we are now looking at heliborne geophysics in areas of Sausar and Sakoli series, in the border of Chhattisgarh and Orissa for so many kimberlite pipes, and in the Kadapa basin where the Dharwar Craton and Kadapa basin they juxtapose. So having said so, GSI is also now undertaking something called a Deep Seismic Reflection Survey, DSRS, which is primarily done to establish the metallogeny part of the major economic mineral potential areas. And this besides, several other research organizations are doing their independent research pertaining to very, very specific areas, be it the central India or the Nephiline Syenite complexes in the country or the alkaline rock masses in the country. So a lot of activity is actually going on. In fact, to be very honest, this requires a kind of a consolidation of activity which is missing.
Thank you, Dr. Rath. I think we are going out of time planned, but still we can take 1 or 2 questions or any comment. Is Sukanto Rai is there? We may comment on the particularly on the digital data logger, and they have also, I think, initiated for the core logging facility in Ministry of Earth Sciences. So, Sukanto, would you like to make comment on it? Please unmute your mic.
Yeah, now it's okay. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Tiwari, and thank you, Dr. Rath, for a very illuminating talk. In fact, about a month ago, Dr. Rath and I had a very long discussion, and one of the things that was discussed was this core repository. So the Borehole Geophysics Research Laboratory from the Ministry of Earth Sciences has set up a core repository in Karad, and we have scanned all the cores from the Koyna region from I think close to 10 boreholes. We have scanned all the cores and made a digital library of the cores, and so that's one thing, yeah, and that's very useful because many times the exploration companies cannot store all the core that they drill. it is physically impossible to store them. So if you can convert all of it into a digital form, you cannot do everything with the digital form, digital images, but you can do a lot. You can still do a lot. I'm happy that Dr. D.K. Sinha is here also, and I would like to touch upon one important aspect which which will basically add to what Dr. Rath said about the priorities in the country. And I think he has pointed out very important priorities, the 3 R's, resilience, relevance, and respect. But I would like to say that collaboration is a very important collaboration has a very important role here, and we have many of us have derived immense benefits from collaborating between institutions. For example, I come from NGRI originally. I have spent more than 20 years at NGRI, and while I was there, I was in the geothermal studies program, and we had a very good collaboration with the Atomic Minerals Directorate. And Dr. Sinha and the previous directors of AMD have been extremely cooperative. So we had a nice tie-up in the sense that whenever the boreholes were drilled by the Atomic Minerals Directorate, and if some of the boreholes were suitable for making temperature measurements, we used to use them for that, and that has led to a good heat flow database for many areas in the country where we ourselves could not drill. So I think this kind of a mutual give and take is extremely relevant today. For example, we have the core scanner operating, and Dr. Rath spoke to me about this. While it will be great that Dr. Rath, you can you get your facility started at MECL, but you are most welcome to use our facility for doing these studies until your facility becomes operational. So I think these are some of the comments which I like to add. Thank you.
No, I'm so glad. Yes, I recall having spoken with you, and I'm also aware that the extension of NGRI really looking at the Deccan basalt, which is still remaining as an enigma and not yet explored. So I'm so glad. And in between, in fact, because of COVID, we could not travel. But I'm actually looking forward to visit your institute in Karad and taking the dialogue further for collaboration.
Thank you.
It has been very informative talk followed by extensive discussions and comments from the several of the senior colleagues. And we had been immensely benefited at the time when the country is having one of the biggest challenge of meeting the expectation of the policy Atmanirbhar Bharat. And in that perspective, if we see the talks of today, what Dr. Ranjit Rath has delivered has been very beneficial, and I'm sure there are several take-home messages from his talk, and we will formally thank him, inviting our office bearer, Dr. Bijen Singh, to propose.
Excuse me, there are some questions in open.
So could you just speak to them?
Yes, sir. One question is, what are the priority areas of focus and integrated approaches in Indian context? And what are the future prospects for youngsters?
The future, can I answer this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please tell the future prospect of the younger geoscientists is immense, provided they take the plunge, provided they push the envelope provided they question their seniors. Earlier, in management jargon, we used to not ask our seniors or challenge our seniors. I would actually urge upon and request the senior leadership through this mechanism that let us encourage questioning by the youngsters to us or to challenge our thoughts, and that will actually enable them to look at out of box propositions. And they're in a very good space right now. Things are happening, and things are happening for good. Things are happening for a change, and these changes are immense, and they are actually adding value to the society. The moment we start believing that every action of ours or every thought of ours or every little effort of ours is adding to the economy, then we become more charged. So let's not lose heart. There is plenty of things around there. In fact, earlier it used to be only the government sector or the public sector per se. With the recent opening of opportunities, the private sector is already there, and I see more international companies or private sector collaborations going to happen. So opportunities are galore, and stay relevant.
So there is one more question. How do we bring in academics and industry on a common platform?
See what happens, all the industries or say companies, they have various internship programs. Plus, while the students are there, I would urge all the academicians who are participating in this conference, avail the opportunity of utilizing their connect or contact and write to us. We will be more than happy to invite the youngsters not only to our head office or to be part of our own training curriculum, but also give them opportunity to be part of the field team, which will actually open up and then make them ready or take an informed decision whether post academics they want to pursue this vocation or not. Because it is very, very essential that only a privileged few who pursue their career out of choice. So the academicians or the faculties must increase the interaction with the industry. And I would also urge upon the industry participant to kind of openly encourage such requests, which we are doing and we will continue to do.
There is one more question. How do we get trained our geoscientists in reputed Indian organizations like NGRI, GSI, AMD? Maybe similar question.
Can you please repeat? The first word is missed.
How do we get trained our geoscientists in reputed Indian organizations like NGRI, GSI, AMD?
Go to the website, write letters to the head of the organization. That's all. The current generation of senior leadership in the country are the best of the lot. They are very, very open. They are very, very progressive. So you have to actually take charge and knock.
You are right. Most of the organizations have their own programs to train the students and give the opportunity to young professionals. It is the people to reach to them.
One more question is, can you please brief about beach sands, if it is in your area of expertise?
No problem. See, the issue is beach sand is something called a beach placer deposit. I would urge upon our youngsters to simply visit IREL website, Indian Rare Earths Limited website, that gives a huge amount of information about beach sand deposit. Now, before giving them the link, these are actually located in the coast of Odisha, a bit of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh and Kerala. We don't have much of beach sand deposit in the Deccan province, that is the coast of Gujarat and Maharashtra. Now, these are all mineral enrichment of garnet, monazite, thoriums, sillimanite, and very, very coarse-grained minerals coexisting together. And if people are interested, some specific request, we can even request CMD IREL to offer a visit to the facility which is in Odisha. It's actually a world-class facility where gravity separation happens to separate out these minerals. And the minerals which are radioactive element bearing are actually retained and the others are traded. So I would urge all the youngsters to spend some time. This is a very interesting dimension where even visit to AMD and interaction with Dr. Sinha would also yield value.
Thank you. We'll move to Dr. Bijen Singh for formal vote of thanks. Dr. Bijen Singh, over to you.
Unmute yourself, Dr. Bijender Singh.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah, Bijender Singh, unmute first. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Tiwari, for giving me this opportunity to express our 30 vote of thanks. It gives me immense pleasure and sense of gratitude to express our sincere thanks to our learned audience who is present here in the webinar and making this program a grand success. Nevertheless, our special thanks on behalf of AEG and on my personal behalf, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Rath for giving this very, very illuminating, thought-provoking, and whatnot. This was really a wonderful exposition of entire gamut of exploration geophysics, exploration geoscience, exploration geology, which is involved in the exploration of mineral and other resources of this country. I think what Dr. Rath has brought out, the takeaway is take risk, but risk based on not only simply like that, but based on certain models, they have to carry out work, assuming that there are relevant models available to young geoscientists so that they can take a risk in taking a new projects, new areas, new challenges. This is the take of the time, because everybody has to not only involve in working in those areas which has been already explored, but venture into those areas which has not been explored, but based on models, exploration models, geodynamic models, geophysical models, and also based on various geotectonic models. See, that is very important. Now, what Dr. Rath has mentioned is very important, that the young generations has to take risk, not only taking the risk, but also they have to learn a lot of new techniques and technologies. Like data mining, he has brought out concept of data mining and concept of digital models. They have to do a lot of modeling activities before they venture into any new activities. So these are the very important aspect which Dr. Dhar has brought out. He has also emphasized about the training aspect. Training aspect not only for the young geoscientists, but also even the professionals who are already involved for developing new strategies for exploration. Only one area which Dr. Rath could not mention about was the exploration of especially the groundwater and also about the geothermal energy. Geothermal energy has also potential in India, which I'm sure that attention has been paid. So with these things, we will express our sincere thanks to Dr. Rath for very, very illuminating talk. Very, very new dimension which is added to the exploration geoscience frontiers. We must express our sincere thanks for his accepting our invitation. In spite of his very, very busy schedules, we all know that he is CMD of so many organizations, but he could spare his valuable times and given us a lot of new thought-provoking ideas. Not the least, we must express our sincere thanks to Director Engineering for giving this, for arranging this lecture, technical support for this webinar. So we must thank all the people involved in arranging these lectures from NGRA side. So with these few words, I will thank you all for attending this lecture. Thank you once again. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.